Hello friends and welcome to the channel. In this video I will be taking you through phase 7 of the Dragonsong's Reprise Ultimate, the final phase. And without further delay, let's just dive right in. Let's begin with the Intermission. Once we kill both Nidhogg and Vega, the phase 4 eyeballs will come back along with Estinian. After a brief moment of time, Estinian will pulse out a 6-second bleed effect. This can easily be healed via GCD heals. A few seconds after the 6-second bleed effect has ended, Forden will come down and send out another pulse with a bleed effect, this time lasting 9 seconds. Again, this can be easily healed through with GCD heals. During this time, be ready to pop any raid-wide mitigations you have available and make sure the party is shielded too, as Forden is going to cast Alternative End, which is a heavy raid buster requiring heavy mitigation to survive. Now entering phase 7 and facing off against our final boss, Dragon King Forden. At this point, make sure your main tank heads to the north side of the arena and is ready to take boss aggro. Both tanks will want to be at the top of the enmity list during this phase, as Forden will do a small circular cleave auto attack around the highest enmity target with a stacking dark damage debuff and the second highest enmity target with a stacking light damage debuff, so you won't want to be stacked for this. You will want to alternate these stacks as they wear off after a while. To do this, we have whoever is going to be the main tank head north and have tank stance on, take aggro on Forden and keep him facing north. He will not auto until after his first mechanic, so do not stress about that. He will then cast Exaflares, which we will go into later, but first let's break down tanking this phase. During Exaflares, the current off tank should turn on tank stance and watch their aggro. All things considered, they should not be able to peel aggro when the main tank has such a lead. After Exaflares, the main tank and the off tank should have established aggro, and they can both easily take the auto attacks. For each mechanic, Forden will auto the main and off tank twice and then cast the mechanic. You should ideally be doing the tank swap during the mechanic to give yourself plenty of time to use Shirk. Be aware that you will not be able to Shirk every tank swap. When Shirk isn't available, make sure the main tank drops tank stance when it's the off tank's time to provoke, and the previous off tank should be popping tank stance to keep aggro. Communicate this with your co-tank, as it can make all the difference during this phase. On the topic of auto attacks, Forden will also auto attack the closest target to him with a stacking physical down debuff, which will expire after some time, just like with the tank autos. He will not do any of these until after his first mechanic, so just like with tank autos, he will only do 2 of these per mechanic. These autos should be alternated between the healers and DPS, 1 auto per player. How we do this is we have melees go into the center of Forden's hitbox for the first 2, range DPS the same for the second set of autos, and healers do the same for the third set of autos, and then repeat. So it goes like this: melee autos, mechanic; ranged autos, mechanic; healer autos, mechanic, and then repeat from the start. Okay, now we have talked about all the tank things and the closest target autos, let's move on to the mechanics. Before we can start talking about Exaflares, we have to talk about his glowing swords during this mechanic. For every mechanic, Forden's swords will either be glowing with fire or ice. If his swords are fire, then you must be outside of Forden's hitbox, as he is going to do an AoE inside his hitbox that will kill anyone caught by it, and those lucky enough to survive a 60% damage down debuff. If the swords are ice, you must be inside Forden's hitbox, as he is going to do an AoE that hits everything outside of his hitbox. Same deal with the fire swords, these will either kill you or severely punish you with a damage down. The in and out will occur after he finishes his cast for whatever mechanic he is casting. So once that cast is finished and the effect has gone off, you won't have to worry about staying in or out until the next set of mechanics. Pay attention to these swords for every mechanic and adapt accordingly. Alright, let's finally talk about Exaflares. 1 Exaflare will spawn directly behind Forden, and 2 will spawn to his front left and front right. They have 3 arrows indicating either all pointing into a straight direction or into intercardinal directions. These indicate the direction of the follow-up Exaflares. In this video, I'm going to teach you the south dodge, as it's the most safe and consistent, but this is also an important reason as to why we have the boss facing north at the start, so that we can use the markings on the map to determine how we are going to dodge. First, let's start with the beginning of Exaflares. We need to pay attention to the swords and see if it's either in or out, and we also want to pay attention to the south Exaflare. Position your camera so you can clearly see the light pillar pillar exactly in the middle of the Exaflare AoE indicator, and as soon as the Exaflare has gone off, head directly towards the center of it. Wait for the second set of Exaflare explosions to go off and then run south into the edge of the map marking, as you should be able to see in the footage. Use this as a reference point for the second dodge. Once the third explosion has gone off, melees and tanks can go back into the boss, range can stay put if they want, as no further explosions will land on them. Melee and tanks beware though, do not run left or right until the fourth explosion has gone off, because there could be an Exaflare going through the left or the right. This is mainly aimed towards tanks though, as you will have to split off from the group as soon as you can to not auto the group. You can safely wait for the fourth explosion though, just do not delay to move after, and make sure one tank goes left and one tank goes right so you do not overlap each other with your autos. Also remember, the first set of autos for the closest target are going off at this point, so for our group we had the one melee go in, take the auto, go out, and then the second melee goes in and then takes the auto. Exaflares will occur 3 times throughout the entire fight, and after every set of Exaflares, Fordham will repeat the same rotation of mechanic, and the closest auto target priority can start again with the melees, serving as a reset. This makes it easy to remember what's coming up next in my experience. After the Exaflares and the follow-up auto attacks, Fordham will begin casting Akh Morn. It is important as a tank to face Fordham north for this mechanic for orientation's sake. Fordham will leave 3 Akh Morn puddles that must be soaked, 1 directly behind Fordham and 2 to his front right and front left, just like with the Exaflares. The Akh Morn directly behind Fordham is a shared tank buster which must be mitigated by the tanks. The left and right ones are 3-player stacks, so you will have 3 players per front stack, ideally 1 healer, 1 ranged and 1 melee. Just use the light parties you've been using throughout the entire fight minus the tanks, and make sure both light parties know what side to take. One group goes left and one group goes right. And remember to pay attention to the swords as well. Akh Morn is a series of consecutive attacks, starting off with 5 for the first Akh Morn and increasing by 1 for every following up Akh Morn. There are a total of 3 Akh Morns in this phase, with the first Akh Morn hitting 5 times, the second Akh Morn hitting 6 times, and the third Akh Morn hitting 7 times. Make sure you are healing in between hits and have plenty of mitigation up for these, and discuss with your group a mitigation plan. These occur between each other every 79 seconds, so plan accordingly. Once Akh Morns have finished, we have the current main tank stay and the off tank move off to the side. We do not need to face the boss north after Akh Morns. Once you have resolved the Akh Morns and take the following 2 auto attacks, Fordham will begin casting Gigaflares. This will spawn 3 proximity based damage AoEs, one after the other in intercardinal and cardinal directions. Again, remember to pay attention to the swords here. First, look for the Gigaflare AoE and go opposite of it. Then keep your eyes open for the next Gigaflare, which will either spawn left or right of you. Once you have spotted the second Gigaflare AoE, you will know to run to the opposite direction of it, and ignore the third Gigaflare for now. Once you are directly opposite the second Gigaflare AoE and it has exploded, continue to run until you are now opposite of the third Gigaflare AoE. Just like with Akh Morns, make sure you are healing between Gigaflare explosions and popping mitigations if you have them. Remember to discuss your mitigation as a group and make a solid mitigation plan so you know what you're popping and when. Having a player who doesn't have a busy job and be a shot caller for this works well, as it's hard to pay attention to the in and out swords and the direction to run if you're someone with a busy job during this part, like a healer. Only 2 Gigaflares will occur throughout the fight, making it the only mechanic in this phase to only occur 2 times, while the rest occur 3 times. After Gigaflares, make sure the main tank is once again facing the boss directly north, as after the auto attacks it's going to be Exaflares. Remember, Exaflares are basically going to reset the boss's rotation, so just remember the previous mechanics in the order I have explained them, and that is what you will be dealing with. For reference sake, you can also check out my kill video. After the third and final Akh Morn, Fordham will do 2 final auto attacks and then begin to cast Morn Afah, his Enrage. This works similarly to Akh Morn, leaving 3 puddles, 1 directly behind him and 2 to his front left and front right. Standing in these will kill the players, but they must be stood in to delay the Enrage. At first, have your 2 healers take the front 2, treating them like Akh Morns and going to their respective Akh Morn positions, and then have a tank take the back one. This will kill off these 3 players. Straight after they die, have the remaining tank take the back spot, and 2 DPS will have to take the front 2 spots. Decide this between your group who those 2 DPS will be. After 3 seconds, those 3 players will also die. The remaining 2 players will have about 3 seconds to kill Fordon at this point, but on a clean run with raid buffs used accordingly and potions timed right, you probably won't cut it this close. And that will just about wrap up this guide. I hope this guide has proven informational to you and you can take something away from it to help you clear this long and challenging fight. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure to leave it a like. If you like the content and aren't subscribed yet, then please do consider subscribing, as it really does help a bunch. And if you have any feedback for this guide or would just like to let me know how you found this fight or whatever really, then leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And without dragging this video on any longer than it needs to be, I will end the video here. So until next time, make sure to take it easy, stay safe, we out, goodbye.